Good afternoon and welcome to Leaders in Lunch webinar. For those of you who might be less familiar with Leadership Winston-Salem, we are a nonprofit organization that works with approximately 100 community leaders each year to educate, connect, and energize leaders to serve and improve our community. Hosting webinars like this is just one of the ways that we continue to educate our class members and stay connected to our alumni. At this time, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Rogan Kersh. Dr. Kersh is a distinguished university professor at Wake Forest University, where he lectures on American politics, health policy, and politics. He has published 3 books on American political history and on health policy, has published over 50 academic articles, and does frequent media commentary on U.S. politics and on the millennial generation. He's been a Mellon Fellow in the Humanities, a Robert Wood Johnson Fellow, and is an elected Fellow of the National Academy of Public Administration. Most recently, Dr. Kersh accepted a position as Academic Director of NYU Florence and Associate Vice Chancellor for Global Programs. Though his travels will take him away from Winston-Salem, he will forever remain a dedicated alumni of Leadership Winston-Salem Insight Class of 2015. Rogan?
Thank you, Catherine, and welcome all to Civics 101 2.0. I love this year's Leadership Winston-Salem Lunch and Learn series. The topics which will scroll across this spring and into the fall have to do with education on local government, why voter participation is critical, and how our elections are being kept safe. And nothing more important than to remind us in this possibly most consequential of elections in modern times, in which we'll be electing mayor and other offices at the local level, governor and other major offices at the state level, and of course, president and Congress at the national level. So an incredibly important year and an incredibly important conversation will be focused today on local government and elections, why those matter so enormously much. I'm so honored to be joined by Michelle Bobadilla of the Forsyth County Board of Elections and Dr. Jack Monell, a longtime academic colleague here in Winston. He's the Associate Professor of Justice Studies and a Provost Fellow at Winston-Salem State University. I'm going to introduce both briefly, and I know we all can't wait to dive in. I'll quickly say, before I introduce our distinguished panelists, as you have questions, many of you have been on these webinars before and know the drill, but just pop them into the Q&A right there at the bottom of your screen. And at first, we'll have a general wide-ranging conversation, which will include questions submitted before this event by our Leadership Winston-Salem community more broadly. Right about 12:45, we'll turn specifically to the questions you all have provided in the chat. Some of those will be answered along the way by our Leadership Winston-Salem colleague, Frida Mitchell. All right, Michelle Bobadilla is Deputy Director of Elections for Forsyth County. She's worked also in our local government with a variety of agencies, including Forsyth County Clerk of Superior Court and our HR department for the city of Winston-Salem. As Deputy Director of Elections, she could not have a more important job as we approach the elections this fall. She oversees the day-to-day operations of the organization that conducts elections in our county. She helps maintain voter records, they verify petitions, they audit campaign finance reports. They also recruit and train poll workers. Anybody with an interest in that most important of electoral volunteer roles in our democracy, Michelle Bobadilla is the person to talk to. They also secure the polling places, test and maintain voting equipment, and audit the ballots cast. So all the questions you have about how our elections actually work in American government, Michelle Bobadilla knows the answer. She's a certified North Carolina elections administrator and is earning her national professional election certification right now at Auburn University and the National Election Center. She'll be certified in the summer of this year. Her bachelor's in social work is from State University of Sao Paulo, and her Master of Public Affairs is from just up the road at UNCG. Dr. Jack Monell is, as I mentioned, a Provost Fellow, and he's the Associate Professor of Justice Studies. How awesome is that title? In the Department of History, Politics, and Social Justice at Winston-Salem State. Provost office, he works with faculty in a whole range of ways, and he's, of course, also a faculty member into his 13th year, I think, in that role. And he teaches a range of courses, all of which weave through social justice in important and powerful ways. He's been also involved in government entities, NGOs, nonprofits, and various academic institutions across his more than 30-year career. His particular academic work explores issues faced by African-American males and the all too often violent encounters they face due to stereotypical perceptions and biases. He served as a trainer, providing technical and support services to local, state, and federal government across criminal justice and social work issues. He's also worked abroad in South Korea and Cuba. He's working now on the socio-political academic activity, of Cuban immigrants in Florida through a distinguished rare NEH fellowship. Dr. Monell has degrees from App State, his PhD from Walden. He's got MSW from Howard and his BA from Towson State. He has both academic and practical experience in our subject today. So you could not be in better hands for this essential conversation. Michelle, I'm going to start with you. You have been doing this work right there in the belly of the election beast, so to speak. Could you talk with our audience generally about the upcoming elections? Where can folks go to find more information about candidates, about the way the election works, and so on? Have there been any changes in the way Forsyth County conducts elections since our last one? And then I know this is on everybody's mind. Could you also talk about some of the measures your office takes to make sure every vote is counted?
Yes, sir. Thank you, everyone, for having me today. I'm very excited. And as we get ready for the 2024 primary election, here are a couple of things I wanted to get first, maybe to share with you to get you prepared to vote this election. And then I'll go into kind of sharing with you what we do to conduct successful elections here in Forsyth County. So as a voter, the best thing to do is know before you go. Check your voter registration, your voter card. Make sure the information you have there for yourself is accurate. A way for you to be able to check if you have the most current information is go to our website. It's www.fcvotes.com. So at our website, there is a little button that says, am I registered? When you put your information in that page, you can see if what you have is current. So that's the first step. That will also tell you if what is your polling place, and it may be so happen that the polling place have changed, but we don't try to change polling places if we don't have to. So in Forsyth County, there are polling places that have been a polling place for 25 plus years. But every so often there are changes. And if you know before you go, you will go to the correct place on election day. The voter registration deadline is something very important that I want to share with you. It's February 9th. So keep that in mind. If you miss that deadline, you still can register to vote and vote same day doing early voting. That starts February 15th. So during early voting, the only thing that you cannot do is change your party affiliation. That has to be done before the voter registration deadline, like I mentioned previously, February 9th. Things to be prepared for when going to vote in 2024 is the new law requirement of the voter ID. That is going to be a requirement for you to vote now. There are several types of acceptable photo IDs that you can present. Most folks will have their North Carolina driver's license, but on our website as well, there's a green banner that will give you a list of all of the acceptable photo IDs that you can present, so you're prepared, and a little bit more of the background of this law in case you're voting absentee ballot, or if you have any questions about any of the other requirements of the law, you can always reach out to our office as well. Now, when it comes to our website, I think it's very important to share this with you. The homepage of our website has the most frequently asked questions right then and there. There's several different buttons that you can check on to be prepared for anything, not just for checking your voter registration, but to check on folks that are your representatives. So who is in your area? Who are you going to be voting for? You can check on your sample ballots. So before you go to vote, you know who's going to be in your ballot based on where you live. You can find your polling place, double check that, and you can see statistics. So past election results, if you're curious about that, and so on. So if you haven't had the chance to go to our website, please do. And you can even sign up to receive notifications about elections. So we are constantly posting news about elections here in Forsyth County and also in the state of North Carolina. So if you want to be up to date with all of that we advertise on our website, please sign up for the email notification. And as I move on, with my next topic here, I wanted to kind of let you know what do we do to conduct the successful elections in Forsyth County? The things that we do to allow you to feel more confident about voting here in our county and in North Carolina, and how we keep elections safe and how your vote counts. So several different steps that I kind of want to go over with you. First and foremost, in North Carolina, under the election law, we are required to have paper ballots. The paper ballots require us to have a paper trail. So in the event that we have a recount, or the event that we have a second primary, that paper trail helps us to recount those ballots, or, audit those ballots, because we are required to audit the election after the election, which I'll go through over that in a little bit. So paper trail is a big piece of the election security, if you will. All of our voting machines in North Carolina and every single county are certified by the U.S. Commission. So these voting machines, they go through a series of tests to make sure they are reliable. They're tabulating the votes correctly. And we are only allowed to do that if they are certified by the U.S. Election Commission Assistance and the State Board of Elections. So all of the machines that we're deploying to early voting sites and election day polling places are certified. One thing that I don't know if most folks know about is that our voting machines have to go through a testing here in our office. It's called the logic and accuracy testing of the voting machine. So we cannot send any voting machines to voting places if they're not tested prior. And the way that this goes is we have a test pattern and we have test ballots. So as we insert these ballots in the tabulator, it prints a results tape, and that results tape has to match the test pattern. And that tells us that that machine is actually, in fact, tabulating what that ballot says. And this process is open to the public. And this is one of the information that we share on our website. And if you're signed up to receive the notifications, you can participate. So we have the public to come watch this process. We have the media to come watch this. It's a very interesting process that I don't think that most folks will be familiar with, but it's highly recommended if you have any questions about voting machines. Another layer of security that I'm passionate about, and I think is one of the most important ones, is the bipartisan trained election officials. The folks that are out there working the polls during election day, during early voting. They are there from beginning to end, and they see the whole thing. And I couldn't imagine, I mean, there's no elections without them. And it's through a mix of party affiliation. They have each other's back. They are upheld to an oath that they have to take in order to serve. They are trained by our office. And in fact, I kind of want to share with you something that relates to the security of the election. In 2022, during our midterm election, 2 early voting workers from different party affiliations, they reported something that they didn't feel was correct during early voting. And it so happened that we had a voter trying to vote under somebody else's voter record, and they caught it. So that just proves how the poll workers out there working together are that layer of security that sometimes we don't realize it. And so I'm so thankful, now this voter is dealing with the consequences, but if it wasn't for the early voting workers, I mean, they're doing an incredible job out there. So I'm very thankful for that. One of the other things that I want to share is the post-audit election that I was mentioning previously. After every single election, every single county in North Carolina receives a randomly selected polling place or absentee meeting ballot or provisional ballot to hand count. So we'll hand count this random selected sample ballots, right, of a precinct on election day or an absentee meeting that we presented to our board. And we hand count those ballots and we compare with the results tape from election day, for example. So let's say that on election day, precinct 21, we have 50 ballots. Well, whenever we hand count those ballots, we have to have also 50 ballots. This process is done after every single election, and it is also open to the public. So we have folks that come in and watch the post-audit election. It's another layer of security that's established in the law. And no matter how big or how small the election is, we always do this process. So if you're ever curious and you want to join it, you're welcome to. And it's also done by a bipartisan team. So folks doing the audit are from different party affiliations, and it's open to the public. And this lunch, in fact, like today, being here with you, this is another layer of security. And the reason why is because the more informed you are, the more that you participate and want to know, and you are involved in groups in your community, the more confident you feel about this process, and you're going to pass that message along. So if you go to your commissioners meeting, your city council meeting, if you participate in boards, I mean, you're already doing this layer of security because you're putting yourself out there to know more and wanting to be, part of it. And I am extremely thankful for the community we have in Forsyth County. You guys are incredible. And I strongly suggest that if you continue to have questions, that you join our Election Academy next year. Every odd number year, we host an Election Academy program, and it's a 4-week program that we meet every week. And we go through elections process from beginning to end. So you get to know everything, kind of experience some mock situations, if you will. So you get to be a board member, you get to approve absentee ballots, you get to do those audits that I just mentioned. So if you're ever interested, please sign up for the Election Academy. I will be posting more information next year, but just giving you a hint a little bit ahead of time. And I know my time is almost over, but I wanted to finish up saying that if you're interested about elections, if you still have questions, please reach out to the Board of Elections. Reach out to us. We're always here to help. We love when you call. If it makes us feel good, then you're interested and you want to know more. And sign up to work. On our website, there is a tab that says election worker. There's an application there. We still need help. Early voting is 17 days away, and election day is right around the corner. So if you're interested, participate on the elections process. We are very thankful if you do. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Deputy Director Bobadilla. Such a wonderful array of detailed information. I feel much reassured myself. Remember, all of you on the webinar, know before you go. And for more information, as Michelle has told us, www.fcvotes.com. Professor Monell, let's turn to you. And it pops in my head as an elections junkie that we're 278 days away from the big November general election. We've got one first, as Michelle was describing. Why is this local March 5th primary important, Professor Monell? Why should any of us bother to turn out?
Thank you, Dr. Kersh. First and foremost, I would follow the Deputy Director with that incredible presentation. Thank you for that. Thank you, Leadership Winston-Salem, for the invitation. I bring you greetings, obviously, on behalf of my interim chancellor, Dr. Anthony Graham, and my colleagues here at WSSU. And no, Dr. Kersh and I did not plan to dress alike, color scheme-wise. So let's put that out there in case many of you are asking. But to the point, jokes aside, I oftentimes convey to our student body, to colleagues, to peers, to community members, that local elections matter. Know before you go. I'm going to put that on a bumper sticker. Know before you go. But the reality of it is local politics matter. I know we've been inundated throughout the media about our national election, obviously, but local elections matter, and they matter specifically because they impact our everyday lives, from government to education, from housing, from funding, everything in between. They all intersect, and most importantly, they impact our daily lives. For those of you that may pay attention, you look at what's happening as it relates to crime and justice, and what we're seeing in the educational system. Myself, our institution specifically, we're a part of one of the constituent schools here at the University of North Carolina system. So our budget, things we're allowed to kind of engage in, are somewhat mandated, predicated, however you want to interpret it, by what our state governing body states. So all of it matters to how we even function from an institutional perspective because we're a state institution. as a social justice professor, I'm incredibly, I pay close attention to these activities, similarly to our moderator, because when I'm a nerd that way, but more importantly, because it impacts how we function in our society. And right now, we have a lot of inequities. I could go out down the laundry list of, food deserts or underfunding for some schools or, some housing issues, particularly here in the East Winston section of Forsyth County where our school is located. And many of the advocacy and activism I see in reference to amplifying the voices of our residents. One of the major concerns that we oftentimes discuss and try to address is the election process for many of us. And Deputy Director Bobadilla said it best, that we work hard to ensure that all votes matter. But we have to, when we, meaning us as the citizens, have to ensure that we are aware of what our laws, local, state, and of course federal, state in reference to that. So I would further amplify her point that we stay involved, go to the website, and ensure that everything is okay before you embark on your voting process. And for us particularly, it's very interesting. I have a 23-year-old and a 20-year-old, soon to be 20-year-old rather. My 23-year-old asked me the other day. Now we rarely talk about politics. They never want to engage in that because they're young and young people do young things. But he really posed some very intellectual conversations as he's in the field now. He's working as an adult, and he was very concerned about the state of our society and politics. And that was refreshing to me because it shows that young people matter. We're both at colleges, Professor Kersh and I. And the reality of it is, when you look at social movements in the sense of ensuring equities are provided across the board, you realize that these social movements historically have been predicated by college students, young people, energized, motivated, enthused about, ensuring that all people, marginalized communities, all communities have the benefit of enjoying the privileges that our society offers. So for me, local politics matter, local elections matter, and oftentimes, I deal with both sides of kind of the ideological sphere. I have individuals say, well, my vote doesn't matter, Doc, I don't want to do it. And I oftentimes, it's almost like the lotto. People say, well, I want to win the lotto. I was like, did you play? Well, I didn't play. Well, you can't win if you don't play. So it's the same concept. You can't influence social change if you don't vote. And your vote does matter. And then I'll finish up with this kind of, I use a lot of sports metaphors all the time. But the reality of it is, you cannot change a system, an entity, or influence change if you're not playing in the game. You want to be in the game. And this is the way for citizens, civilians who aren't politicians, who aren't elected officials, to participate in this game and influence the outcome in one way or another. So I'll yield back to our moderator, but I want to reinforce to our audience members and alumni from Leadership Winston-Salem, continue to be leaders and stewards and ambassadors in your respective communities, because the reality of it is, we are charged with that. We have to continue to keep these young people motivated and be mindful that the media, and when I say the media, I include social media, the news, print. We still have people, we still have print editions of things. It is our job and obligation to sometimes clear up the misinformation. And I think that's the battle for myself and even for Professor Kersh and even for our deputy director. People are influenced by what they see, what they hear, and being bombarded with information that sometimes you got to filter through it to really get to the essence of what's fact or fiction. So I yield back to you, Professor Kersh.
We will continue to hear these wonderful insights from both of you. Thank you for that. Powerful reminder that all votes matter, that you can't influence social change if you don't vote, and the importance of young people engaging in the civic sphere. You're right. So many of our major movements and changes in American history have been brought about by youth, although sometimes guided by, or at least engaged with us as well. I want to talk to you both about social justice and fairness and equity in elections. Deputy Director Bobadilla, I'm going to start with you. We loved your stories about these wonderful election workers, how well trained they are, how responsible. I really want to join the Election Academy. Thanks for flagging that for us. Our leadership Winston-Salem community, as they posed questions beforehand, had understandably these days some pretty powerful questions about attempts to influence election workers. Some of the scary stories that came out about the 2020 election. If you wouldn't mind, Deputy Director, talk about what it takes to get trained and certified in a role like yours, and what steps are taken or could we help take as citizens to ensure that people who do this incredibly important work are free from harassment?
Yeah, when it comes to the training of the elections, there's no way that you can work in elections and not be taught, about elections. So we don't do anything that it's not in the law. I mean, that's just really how it is. I know there's very little room for us to be able to create something around the law. So we try to perfect procedures and processes, but it's all based on the law. And every county in North Carolina, I can only speak for North Carolina because that's the state that I work at. But every county in North Carolina, we are based on for the same standards, doing the same thing. It changes a little bit here and there because it depends of how much help do you have, how much budget do you have, and things of that sort. But our precinct officials, they are required to attend training, because how can you put somebody out there to assist voters exercise that right without them being trained? And so we try to supply them with all kinds of materials. So they get a manual, they get flow charts, they get quick guides, and we offer extra training. We have what we call the election lab now. So folks that attend training and to work the polls, if they don't feel confident enough, they can attend the lab and get to know more and just spend hours with our trainers so they can feel more confident. With the new requirement for the photo ID, we have seminars going on while training is going on, while everything else is going on, because we want voters to be prepared and knowledgeable. What you said previously about the mismal and disinformation, I think is the biggest challenge for us right now. And it's not just Forsyth County or North Carolina. It's a nationwide kind of issue, and we can only do what we can do. And what I can say is, if you have questions, you have to be involved, because that's the only way that you can really do something about it. And so we try our best to keep folks informed as much as we can, and participate in conversations like this. And it's just, those are some challenges that it's hard to control. And now with internet, I mean, a little thing becomes a big thing, and there's nothing you can say sometimes that will change. So, which is very unfortunate. But I like to think that there is a community out there that is so engaged and so committed in doing the best they can. And I think that's what makes us, at least me, personally, so excited about the elections process. I think this is incredible, coming from a country that you're obligated to vote. You don't have a choice. You have to. It makes me so proud, to call the U.S. my home and know that I can choose to. And so I think it's wonderful, although there's challenges.
Oh, it's very moving and powerful to hear both your affirmation and excitement, and also about those challenges. And I think it leads all of us on this webinar to genuinely, as we do with our brave soldiers, to thank you and your election worker colleagues for your service, because it's incredibly important. Dr. Monell, I want to pick up this thread. You've written and in lots of ways established yourself, including in your earlier wonderful comments as an expert on social justice and equity. I wonder if you'd highlight some of the social justice and fairness concerns with the upcoming elections. Are there enough polling places? Is it easy to register as a voter? Is there availability in place and times? What about gerrymandering? Talk some about some of the, we know, legitimate fairness concerns with elections generally, and then to the extent that applies in our own county. No criticism of our deputy director at all, of course, but where did you all who are experts in this space worry about or pay attention to with respect to local elections?
So very good question. And in reference to to expand on the deputy director's comments, I do applaud our poll workers, our election officials who manage this. I oftentimes say, like, it's particularly during this period, that I don't envy you. I applaud you, because the reality of it is it's become more visceral to date. Election always has brought the ugly side of some individuals, but equally, Michelle, I still believe in the process, right? I still believe, even with its quirks, and we as a society, this social experiment of ours, we continue to evolve and make it better, address the inconsistencies and make it better. With that being said, our concerns are, the threatening behaviors of our polling workers specifically, but then most importantly, the communities that are that go out there and vote. And we look at that. We look at literature that gets sent out either via email or even in your mailboxes that has misinformation or threatening information and frightening people, even in the 21st century. And I know some of the people in the audience, no, they don't do that. No, unfortunately, we're still seeing that. Most specifically, PBS published an article in August of last year talking about the issues with poll workers and things of that nature. And 1 out of 5 poll workers had left their job because of being threatened working the polls. And then you further amplify that internally with even your own community and the disruption and the animus that you have because you choose one party over another. There was a time, I won't date anybody on this call, but I'll say it for myself as a youngin' at the time, where you could, even in politics where you didn't always agree, there was a common, almost, there was a mutual respect for the differences. And you can kind of table some of it, work towards, the centrist kind of decision-making, whatever it would be, and then you move forward. Today, unfortunately, it has become, and I won't mention the details of it, but something just popped up on my feed where a son, unfortunately, just murdered his father because of his election, because of his party affiliation. I mean, a grown man, mind you, not no. So this is our concern. From a criminological perspective, we worry about, the ability for citizens to be able to partake in the election process. We are concerned about our elected officials, but more importantly, we're concerned about politicians who oftentimes receive much of this because citizens are not pleased one way or another. And I think we have to continue to support individuals, particularly here in Forsyth County. Every kind of city does it differently in reference to how they police it. But the one thing that I do kind of rest assured on, we have a strong sheriff through Winston, because obviously this is Winston-Salem. We have a chief of police who works well with the community leaders to ensure that our citizens are protected. And I would be remiss if I didn't identify, even when we look at individuals like the Ministers Conference of Leaders of Winston-Salem and beyond, and they work well with ensuring that all community representation is provided information, as well as any resources they need to ensure that they vote. Voting is paramount. And I think it is our obligation and duty to ensure that all persons are able to vote. And knowing what that is, and I think to Deputy Director's point, nowadays, because of these things, it's hard to vet information. My youngest, many moons ago, used to say, "Hey, Dad, if it's on the internet, it's real." And it took us some years to get him through that. But he clearly realizes that's not always true. But how many of us do subscribe to the notion that if it pops up here, oh, it's legitimate, it's vetted? I remember, growing up and my grandmother reading 5 newspapers to get, varying points in New York City where I grew up. But I am confident, and I'll finish up on this because I think it's pertinent. I'm a transplant to the city of Winston as well, and I have been here 13 years, and it's been one of the most great experiences to see how our city operates and our county operates. It's not without fault, but I see progression in spite of some of the spikes and the anomalies here and there. So I'm confident in how we're moving forward. We still got work to do, and I'm not naive that way either. Thank you.
I hear an amen from our webinar audience. Thank you for that. You all are starting to fill the Q&A with really great questions. Again, at 12:45, so in about 9 or 10 minutes, we'll switch over to things you all are putting in the Q&A. So keep them coming in. And I'm going to turn back to you, Deputy Director Bobadilla. And all right, I listened to you. I showed up. I voted. Listened to you both, really. I showed up and voted on March 5th in the primary and November 5th in the general. The election results are in. And so what? You worked in local government, the court side and also the agency executive side. Michelle, does our local government, our city council, our county commissioners, the executive branch, mayor, and that set of agencies, they do anything important? Does our city council have any power? What's going to happen now that I did the right thing and voted? Talk about local government, what kind of significance and power it has in practice.
For the sake of neutrality of my position here at the Board of Elections, as we are an institution that is not affiliated with any party, I will defer this question to Jack.
Well dodged.
Touche. I'll take it. Yeah, I'll take it. It's okay. So that was a good pass. That was almost very that was a politician move there. Thank you, Michelle. But jokes aside, when we look at this from kind of that, and I too will obviously in my line of work, we remain as objective as we can as well. But the one thing that I will highlight that I neglected to focus on or mention last time was the gerrymandering piece, which is very important in our society. And for perspective, gerrymandering in its most simplistic way is redrawing our political lines in our jurisdictions. And what you find oftentimes is whomever the political powerhouse is in any given municipality or state or whatever, they work towards ensuring that they get the majority, the best bang for their buck, politically by how the jurisdictions and the lines are drawn. And that does present many issues. You've seen politicians most recently, because of gerrymandering, say they have no shot to really regain or maintain their position. So they're bowing out or retiring out. And this is oftentimes, and this is not exclusive to Forsyth County or Winston-Salem, or the state of North Carolina. This is national. And gerrymandering continues to be problematic because the reality of it is that persons who should be represented, we're looking at equity in gerrymandering, not only exclusive to voting, but the reality of it is the resources one gets for any particular jurisdiction or municipality is also impacted by that. So that becomes, excuse me, incredibly important that we address that. And many of you who've been paying attention have seen this play out on a national level in the courts, because, something as surprising to me, I guess, and I'm being a tad bit facetious, if you look down south, further south at Louisiana and states like that, and others where they had to redraw their districts to ensure that more African-American representation was being represented. And I found that, very pleasantly surprising. But the reality of it is we're seeing that across the board, and it's basically stacking the deck. So there's no equity. We're talking about social justice. There's no equity. There should be equity in the voting process to ensure that all votes are able to vote for their particular candidate without influence from any political party. And that's probably the best way I can answer that in this forum at this moment.
I just note, with thanks to both of you, and particularly that good detailed answer about gerrymandering and legitimate fairness concerns, that as there's lots of details that we can express further, but our county and city have a sort of jointly powerful forms of government. We've got a board of commissioners in the county, and we've got a city council headed by a county executive and a mayor. And the good news is, in my experience over the last dozen years in this city, that we've got a lot of good connection and collaboration, even though there's both parties represented at the county and city level. A couple of the Leadership Winston-Salem folks asked about, as I tried to tee up, really, how does local government actually function after the votes are in? And we've, I think, appropriately, given the year, been very focused on the elections here. But the operation of our city council and our county government is incredibly important. And I've lived places elsewhere where there were deep divisions and outright battle between the two, I lived many years in New York City, where the city and the state government famously don't get on at all. And that is mercifully most of the time not been the case here. It's a real credit to Winston-Salem, I want to say, as moderator in that powerful regard. Wonder if either of you have, in the handful of minutes before we turn to what is a nice set of questions coming in during the webinar, anything more to say about local government, how it works or doesn't work? Michelle, this is not a partisan question. It's not a charged who should we vote for. It's once the votes are all in, how does the city council and the county government and the mayor and the county executive so on work together? Again, my experience is that it's highly positive and collaborative. I haven't been in these chambers the way you have, working again Superior Court and elsewhere, and human relations right there in the heart of it. It's well-functioning government, or are there things we could improve for either of you as local wonderful residents?
There's always things to improve. I mean, when we think that we're doing well, you're mistaken. You're not. There's, you got to do better, and this is just not just in politics, in local government, but it's in life. But as we were talking about voting in politics, yeah, I'm going to talk about as a voter. I've worked in the state, I worked for the city, and now I'm in the county. There's several ways that we are interconnected. Obviously, because we are branches of government, we're within the government. And, after elections happened, the way for you to know what's happening with the folks that you voted to be there is participating. If you vote for X, Y, and Z, and you want to know if they're doing a good job, you will only know if you're there. So attend your city council member meeting. Attend your commissioners meeting. I mean, they're weekly, and there's so much information, and some of the information that they have out might not be of your interest, but there's so much that they share. I mean, they go from discussing if you can have chickens in your backyard, through the water that you're drinking. So I know that there's this thinking that it's all on the people that you elect, but you have to take some responsibility too. I mean, you're the voter, you live in this town, you live in this county. There's a little bit of the pressure on you as well. You have to do your part. And they will not know what's not being done. They will not know if you're doing correctly if you're not out there telling them, because at the end of the day, you elected them, you have that power, and that kind of gets kind of missed, because when you vote, you think that's it, right? But it's not. So I'm gonna end at that.
And I would further, I'm sorry, I would further add, I'm big on accountability and responsibility, right? And I say that I come from very humble beginnings in New York City, very humble. And if my grandmother taught me anything, was that information is power and to be involved. When she immigrated to this country, she had her wits about her, and she had her intelligence. And she said, college was the way, be involved, build a community, grow a community. So I say that to say that, what I say that is that, and I use the sports, I'm going back to the sports metaphors. I'm sorry, y'all. You have to, you want to win in the game. You want the game to win. You want your team to win. You have to be in the game. You want, and I look at this kind of metaphorically as our society. We want to see Forsyth County, the city of Winston, continue to succeed. Well, you can't do it from the sidelines. You can't do it, being a spectator. It's not a spectator sport. No, we're not. And I speak as a civilian, right? I'm a citizen of this county, of this city. And my thing is, I've made it my business. And to Rogan's point, coming from New York City, the access that we as citizens have to our local municipality, our county, our state, is unheard of in a larger city like New York or in DC, where I went to school and worked for many years. The access we have here as regular everyday citizens is important. So there's no excuse to not get your point across. You have access to your commissioners, you have access to your council members, you have access to your school board members. That's another key. We didn't, that can be a whole nother hour discussion. How important even those boards are and commissions within the city are in reference to governing our society. So I would leave many of you, I know we're going to do the Q&A now, just be involved. You don't have to have a PhD or just be a well-informed citizen, steward of your community. That's all I would ask. That's what I try to do as an individual who pays taxes here. And let's help each other help our community grow. And I yield back to you, Rogan.
Really inspiring from both of you. Thank you again. I'm going to go to questions that have come in during the webinar now. There was still some from the Leadership Winston-Salem community I'll try to weave in before we're done. But Randy Wooden asks, well, it's very important for people to vote and to volunteer with elections. So you all have struck a nerve wonderfully. Could you also please speak to encouraging good folks to get involved in running for office? Love to have either or both of you comment.
Yeah, so I'll start. So that kind of, so my department, we arguably prepare, motivate, inspire the next generation of leaders in politics, in government, in public safety, whatever the case. That's kind of our mantra. That's our mission. That's our vision, to ensure that our students are prepared. So that's something I always convey to them. I often say, students will say, well, why do I want to be in politics? Kind of these negative comments or responses. And I try to reinforce the significance of why you should be at the table. But most importantly, historically, what our ancestors did, fought, represented, for us to be here now and even debate why you should or shouldn't be a politician. So where I do realize for many, they may not view it, as the best career option. It actually is, number one, a great career option if that's kind of your lane. But number two, there's no better way in any given society, not just North Carolina, Forsyth County, or Winston, to be an advocate for your community, your constituents. We can talk and publish papers and do these lecture circuits all day and inspire people. But Rogan and I, we don't pass any legislation. We can influence and tell and write white papers as to why, a certain bill should be pushed, but we have no influence. You as the civilian, as a citizen, have the power Just step out there on faith and just go out there and represent your community. So I'll pass it back to Deputy Director and answer the next
one. The only thing that I can add to that is, as we can motivate folks to run for office, you know, again, just because we are just here to conduct the elections and administrate the elections process. If you ever have questions of how to run for office, what you need to do, what office you're qualified for, and anything of the sort in the realm of being a candidate, just reach out to our office. We have all the information that you might need.
Also had, thank you, both inspiring and very fact-based. We also had a question about term limits. Now we're shifting from elections, although we'll come back to that with one more Q&A. Shifting from elections to actual governing. There are not term limits for county commissioners or city council members or mayor or any local officials in which I'm aware. Is that a good or a bad thing? It's unlike some other places which do limit terms. Our governor, for example, in North Carolina, Virginia, term governors are limited to a single term. Talk a bit about term limits and then any reflections on why we don't have or maybe need them here.
So I will present what has been a very popular discussion and debate over the years with our student body and some peers. Many of our younger people, our younger students today, oftentimes convey, hey, Doc, we need term limits. So of course I pose the question, well, why? Why? You know, give me some data. What do you know, what's the rationale? You know, there's something to be said about having wisdom, you know, making decisions. And, you know, sometimes that comes with age and years of experience. And what I'm finding today more than ever is that younger voters, particularly, you know, that demographic, you know, anywhere from like, the mid 20s, that kind of range to probably, 35, 40 group, they oftentimes are saying our politicians are they're too old, not to, amplify ageism here, but they oftentimes say they're not speaking to me. They're speaking maybe to the generation they represent, or maybe even one back. Our politicians, some of our leaders today are several generations removed from our young people, theoretically. So I think term limits, as far as the discussion goes, it always depends on a deeper kind of discussion should go into what we see locally, as we're talking about local politics. How would it impact us here in Winston-Salem? How has our local representation, served its constituents, and then have those debates. Because I think for many of us, visually speaking, because once again, we're limited to this. And Dr. Kersh, you can remember this when we talk about former President JFK and their televised debate. That was a big thing because he favored well, he appealed to the public. And I think what we're seeing, because we have so much of this, younger voters are definitely fixated on the imagery of our candidates, and then couple that with misinformation, then it just goes every which way. So for me, from my experiences with working with young people and kind of working in the community, you're starting to see a trend of people really pushing term limits. If we go in that direction, who knows? But I know if you look at that demographic, people definitely are pushing for term limits.
Terrific. And we got two more questions, which I think you all can probably answer relatively quickly, although what a rich, wide-ranging discussion we've had so far. Michelle, specifically for you, I think, if I want to become a poll worker, do I have to go to the Election Academy? And whether or not I have to, when is it?
No, the Election Academy is something completely separate. If you want to become a poll worker, you give me a call today. And you have a required training that we offer that you will attend. The Election Academy is just a program that actually Forsyth County is the first county in North Carolina to offer that. And it's just something that we came up with to inform voters, to get you to understand elections. And that kind of stemmed from the 2020 elections. It was such a hard time for everybody. So much going on. We figured, like, what else can we do, to make sure that our county feels confident? And so this is just a program that we offer in odd number years. So 2025 is when we're going to be offering again. We had the first one in 2022. Last year we had one, and then 2025. And the reason being is because even number years are too busy. I mean, we have a primary and we have a general election, and we don't have time to host that. So that's why it's every odd number of years. And if you have your e-notification ready to go, like I mentioned, from our website, you will get an email from us when we post the new election academy coming up.
How cool that we're the first county to do that. I didn't know. That is just a wonderful example of the kind of local involvement that Dr. Monell's been telling us throughout. We got one last question that's come in. This is from Priscilla Green, and I don't know the answer to this. Hope you all know something about it. She wants to know if we'll return to town hall style meetings where we voters can meet all the candidates. And I confess that I don't know that we used to do that in Forsyth County. I do know that individual candidates hold town halls. I went online and looked, and without offering any endorsements, I noticed that tonight at 6 o'clock, Rhonda Mays, who's running for Senate District 31, is holding a town hall to get to know her specifically. It's not a debate, it's not a whole set of candidates, but at the library auditorium in Forsyth Central. So I know individual candidates do that, but do either of you know if we used to have town halls, and or if, as Priscilla is asking us, we might go back to doing that again, presumably post-COVID? Priscilla, you have stumped all three of us.
Yeah, I'm kind of clueless in that regard. I don't, and mind you, I've been here 13 years, 13 give or take. I don't know if they did it prior to that, but since I've been here, I don't recall that ever happening.
I'm not familiar with it either. I think this is something that you probably need to reach out to the city and to the county commissioner's office to check on those. I'm not familiar with it either.
Wonderful questions all. I want to thank our audience members for engaging as powerfully as they did, with a particular deep bow of gratitude to Michelle Bobadilla and Dr. Jack Monell. What a wonderful, engaging, spirited conversation we've had today. And now to close us out is the inimitable, magical, and fabulous Leadership Winston-Salem Executive Director, Catherine Perry.
Oh, go on, Rogan. So my sincere thanks to our moderator, Dr. Rogan Kersh, and our panelists, Michelle Bobadilla and Dr. Jack Monell, for their time and for their passion for our community. February marks the beginning of Leadership Winston-Salem's recruitment season. If this webinar struck a chord with you and you'd like to learn more about what we do and why all of your friends are members of our alumni family, please reach out to our program director, April Garner-Davis, whose email is being put in the chat at this moment. If you are already an alum and know someone who would love to experience Leadership Winston-Salem, please send that person's name and contact information to April as well. Just a reminder that Leadership Winston-Salem is a nonprofit organization that relies heavily on the support of individual donors and corporate sponsors to provide an array of programming. If you enjoyed what we offer today, you are invited to make a contribution to the organization on our website by clicking the Donate Now button on the homepage. My thanks to each of you for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and remember, vote early and vote often.